Currently in China, there are 56 ethnic minority groups. The two that I will be focusing on the most will be the Bai and the Hui. The Bai minority is about 85% of the population in Xizhou. The Bai are one of Yunnan's largest and most prosperous minorities. They live primarily around Dali and Erhai Lake. Other 10 to 15% of the population in Xizhou is the Hui minority. The Hui minority is also known as the Chinese Muslims. They are the second largest ethnic group in China after the Zhuang. Most Huis are Sunni Muslims in a Hanafi school. Even so, other Muslims outside of China view them as being too close to Chinese, while the Chinese view them as outsiders because of their belief in Islam. Xizhou is located in the Yunnan province, and we'll be staying in Xizhou. The Yunnan province has about 26 ethnic minority groups, which causes a lot of diversity. And that is one of the reasons why I chose this topic. The area highlighted in red is where the Hui live, and the blue areas circled are the Linden Center areas where we live. And the area that's circled in purple is the Sifangjie, which is the main place in Xizhou. In order to investigate the relationship between ethnic minority groups, one must consider the event shared, the event separated, and the events where they start out separated but become integrated. All minorities go to school together. They learn the same curriculum, they go to school at the same time. Every single minority in Xizhou is pretty much friendly. Minorities don't take a part in friendship. Some of my sources, such as Mr. Zhang, Aling, Mr. Xu, and Elmer, told me that there are areas where both minorities live together. And this is mainly around the village of Xizhou because this is where tourists normally come and they want to experience both of the minorities' food and culture. For minorities are separated during lunchtime in school. The Hui go back to their parents' houses or the Hui restaurants to eat, while the Bai go around Sifangjie or sometimes go back to their parents' houses to eat. This is because there are specific foods that the Hui cannot eat, as they have food restrictions. So they cannot eat the biggest restriction being pork, and also they will not be eating anything that has cooked from a wok or a pan that has cooked something that they're restricted to eating. This noodle dish is a good example of what a Hui would eat, because for meat, instead of having pork, they would have beef. So this is a map of Xizhou, and there are some areas where only Hui people live, or only Bai people live, as sources such as Elmer, Aline, and Mr. Zhao, they have told me that this is because there are some areas such as the mosque where only Hui people like to live because they can go there to pray 5 times a day. The mosque and those streets highlighted in red are pretty much where Hui people live. And it might seem a bit little. Remember that the Hui are only 10 to 15% of the population in Xizhou, while the rest of the area in Xizhou village is Bai. Another reason is that some areas where only Hui people live and some areas where only Bai people live is because their ancestors stayed there and never moved. Their ancestors stayed there and never moved because in 1872, the Bai and the Han plotted an attack against the Hui, which resulted in the mass killing of many Hui. And after that, there was a need for separation between minorities, which is why they lived separate. So therefore, they would just continue staying there because it's more convenient, and sometimes it's too troublesome to move again even after all the conflict has ended. Another reason would be that even if the relationship is really good, they would still want to live with their minority because they have more in common with them. This is a picture of the gate that separates the Hui and the Bai restaurants in Sifangjie. And Bai like to live around their area in Sifangjie, while Hui like to live in their area in Sifangjie. There's only one occasion where minorities start out separate but become integrated, and that is marriage. It's not very common for people of different minorities to get married, because people with the same minorities have the same customs and traditions, so it is maybe considered easier for them. But there are some occasions where there are people who marry with different minorities. The two people that I talked to were Mrs. Zhao and Mrs. Ma. So Mrs. Zhao is a Bai woman and her husband is a Han man. So although there was difference, there wasn't that much in terms of customs and traditions. She told me that her parents didn't mind if she was marrying another minority as long as they were destined to be together and she felt that this was the right fit for her. But for Mrs. Ma, she is a Hui woman but her husband is a Han man. For Mrs. Ma though, she told me that her parents would not let her marry Mr. Wang unless he converted to Islam, which he did, and she's very thankful for that. When I was talking to Mr. Duan, who is a former government official, he told me that there are some marriages that are incompatible because of the different minorities. These marriages are not compatible because their cultures and customs are too different. Every single person that I interviewed told me that their relationship with other minority was great. They were all friends, they don't have any arguments or conflicts, and therefore Xizhou, in all, is a very peaceful place